Hello and welcome back to the channel and another one of our complete-ish course construction videos. I'm sure that'll eventually get easier to say. When you last saw us, we were planting 9. That's now kind of completed. Still not 100% on the bunkers behind the green. I love the ones in front. The other thing I'm struggling with a little bit more is the actual heavy rough tool on this one. I just wish it didn't go like a straight line as much as it does, and there was more of a chance to generate this kind of patchiness would be great, but we'll work that out. I did quite like one of the things late on, I'm not sure I mentioned, was making the green bigger and adding fairway in. I've since enlarged that a little bit and I need to play with the sculpting a touch more. But the benefit of this is I think you can produce an effective green shape that's much more extreme. So here you've basically got that as the edge of the green, whereas if I was ever putting a bunker in, that pin becomes totally inaccessible in a way that now it has kind of different ways to get at it, whether you're using the back slope or slightly running it through the front slope. But yeah, pretty happy with how this one's come out. Added some rocks in to integrate a little bit more. I think it flows nicely from 8 to 9, and then you'll see also from 15 as well. Have additionally come up with a bit of an idea for 15, which I'm happy with. The T can move, there's tons of space there, which is good. Essentially, you're going to come up to the ridgeline trying to hug the right hand side. If you do that, this green flows nicely and naturally, which is fun, from back left to front right. What's really nice about this hole is all of the stuff was naturally there already. So there's this little swale, which we're going to incorporate as well. So you can see how you could run an approach through that to a front pin. But if you're coming at it more from this angle, you're hitting more at this side slope and trying to kind of judge this green that's then falling away from you a little bit more is going to be tougher than, say, coming in at it from this side. There's also this lovely dip in the fairway just about here that we're going to try to utilize as well. So I think this one should work out pretty nicely. And definitely the right move to use this Greensite rather than the one down here from multiple different reasons. We're not going to look at 10. This is just a fledgling idea and will likely get scrapped. The only thing I think I'll keep is the idea of it being quite narrow and pinching down at driver level. Other than that, lots of it might change, including I feel the green configuration as is just a bit too standard, so we'll see if we can jazz that up a little. What I wanted to look at in this episode really more than anything was 11, because I've gotten to the point where I feel like I want an idea for this one, and all I really had was just the green being on the ocean and seeing this skyline view. Now, before I show you the actual green and configuration, I went through a number of different ideas offline just to get an idea of how this might work. The first was doing some sort of kind of more funky green shape, kind of if you think of Augusta 3, that sort of thing where there's this lobe on one side. Behind it, there was always going to be cliffs, so depth long, which won't really ever come into play for anyone. It's quite hard to manufacture missing long. It's very tough. But could put bunker in front. That would mean that laying up here for this pin, over this side for this pin, like there's some interest there, but I didn't really think it worked given what I was going for. I also toyed with, well, what about if you approached it this way and kind of made that more extreme? Again, it just didn't really fit with how I wanted it to play. And also the challenges then, secondary idea I went for was just, well, let's have a running approach. It's all downhill. You can judge where you land at, bunker left, bunker right. But I just felt loads of people would just take aim down the middle. They're not going to miss by that much, and they end up with an easy chip and a putt. And major is challenging for that. Like manufacturing this level of difficulty while still feeling like you're staying true to what you want to do, particularly if you're going the route I am, which is kind of keeping width and having it kind of be playable off the tee. That's really challenging. So this one didn't really work either. So in the end, this is kind of the first pass I've come up with, and I thought it would be useful to see this built out. Now, the first thing that we've got, bunkers are all just completely temporary. I like that you're going to see the ocean from a long way away, and you've got this kind of skyline fairway, which works nicely. I figure a diagonal carry down the right is quite a nice way of doing it. The ball kind of going off towards the left is kind of I guess, a little bit of reverse camber here as well, but I think that's going to be a must on this sort of a course. Now I've put the flag as far left as it possibly can do. One thing that I wanted to try to do this one was fight tendency a little bit, because my standard would be to put it straight, the green straight on, middle of the trees, and I thought it might be quite interesting to have this as a sort of look where the hole kind of turns two ways. And it's quite sinuous, which I don't really do very often, and you can overdo it, but I liked the reason I liked this one was because I found a way to do difficulty, I think. And that is that there's this bit of a hog's back entrance and a dip down here, which means that you have to have it angled this way. All of this was trying to think about how do we bring this little cove more into play. Well, you have to be generating an angle where people are hitting at it, but also still allowing for that shot. So if people end up down the right hand side, which is preferable, they can then hit into this little hog's back spine and it should kick the ball this way if we get the sculpting right. However, if they go too far over it, well, that's when you're hitting the downslope. That's when you're ending up potentially long and in real trouble. Now, it won't necessarily be ocean right there, but it will be enough that, like, that's not a good place to miss. And I think that can make people, if not, nobody's ever really going to lay up on these holes in majors. You don't really see people lay up on par fives very often. And I think if they do, then it's probably because I've taken, like, I want people to go for that shot. Like, you want to leave eagle as an option on the table and have everyone's realistically going to make birdie. Par is your equivalent of bogey on a par five, unless you're making it distinctly long. So that's the plan. The green kind of long and relatively slender. That's going to encourage people to hit a draw, and then I'm hoping that if you're trying to hit a draw off that draw lie, and then you've got potential of hitting a tree and you've got bunkers and you've got to be turning it and getting it absolutely right. I think that's got the level of challenge that I would kind of want with this. So what I thought we'd do would now be to Okay, so quite a lot of change and yet not a huge amount of change at the same time. I just was feeling that you were getting too far left on this one and not being allowed a shot. And by making the angles so severe, I felt I was running out of the ability to do much interesting stuff with the land that we had. Additionally, I felt that straight on just wasn't working for me either visually or in terms of playing at the hazards. So by shifting the tee just 20 yards left and the fairway kind of about the same, maybe a little bit more, we're now hitting up and into a hillside and with your preferred angle on the outside of the dogleg, which is something that's a little bit different to what we've done previously. It also takes it from being a reverse camber hole. We've got 2 of those already, and it's not a trick. So in 16, extremely reverse camber, and 1 will be as well. And that's not a trick you want to pull very often. So having a third would have felt a touch too much, in my opinion. But by changing the dog leg and using this little dip and just making it a bit more exaggerated to what it was, we've really reduced the effective fairway width. So it's down to, if you're hitting driver, potentially down to as little as getting past that bunker, 10 yards or so, which is a really tight tee shot. And if you go much further left, then you're dealing with this runoff, and it's whether you lay back a little bit more. So, and with this one being a relatively short downhill par 5, it's still very much reachable, as you'd have seen with one of the play tests. I'm okay with putting a bit more pressure on driver. We're also going to leave a ton of space short if you wanted to hit 3-wood, and that's when the cross bunkers up here start coming into play. The other reason for changing it was also visually. Straight on holes, just I find them a lot harder to work with generally. I prefer dog legs whether gentle or more severe, and this just made the slope make a bit more sense. So you're now being asked to hit a draw from a draw lie and basically bounce it in from around about here and not hit the other side of the hog's back. Now, there's going to be similar kinds of shots. You're going to be asked to use to play lots of different shots off lots of different lies on this course. But I think this was the most obvious way of going the whole design that we wanted to. Now, what we're next going to do is really work at this hog's back and make this make sense. So rather than just chucking a spine here, which I see people do quite often, you've got to work this contour out, make it make sense. So therefore, you're going to have a high plateau in the fairway and everything else is falling down, which is kind of happening because we've been careful about how we do it. So if you're looking for the best layup, well, it's closer to these 2 bunkers rather than being funneled down to here. Yeah, you get the angle, but you don't get a ton else, and you get more of a slope and you're potentially running through to the rough. Again, that makes sense with the land we've got in bigger picture. You can see it's all falling this way and then rises up a little bit more on this side, but we want to make the whole harmonious with the land and then use what we've got. I'm chucking some trees down, and then what we're going to try to do, whether exactly here or here, I felt visually this needs, with a hole like this where the fairway is here and then suddenly the fairway is going all the way out here, if you look at the right edge of the fairway compared to where it is here, we've got to really justify that width and make it work on a course that's actually, you don't want it to be really pinched in driver for like 10 yards or so and then suddenly look really wide everywhere else. You want to provide that width and options, but it's a balancing act. You've got to be careful about how you manage it and where we're bunkering. So I'm thinking bunker here, and then one either here or here, something kind of coming out of these trees and feeding into that hog's back spine. So if you imagine the high plateau is behind this bunker, the sculpting is then going to take this down into the low plateau, which again all makes sense. So try to use the features that you've got in a way that makes sense as well as strategically. We're going to have a couple of bunkers here as well that, again, they're on a diagonal playing away from the way you're facing, so can kind of hoover up balls potentially that aren't well enough laid up. And then we've got to work with the green and work out what we're going to go with for this. It's probably going to be gently front to back, I think, on an approach that's dropping down 12 feet. I don't know if I want to do much else, but we'll see what the sculpting kind of gives us as we go. But yeah, that's really how we've gone about doing this. And what I'm then going to have to go back and do is look at 10 again, because having looked at potentially pinching driver here and laying back up, do I want to do that kind of twice in a row? Although this one is less obviously pinching driver. We haven't got two bunkers on either side, so this is probably still okay. But you need to do something very different with how you're doing it. So everything kind of works in tandem. But I think I'm much happier with how this hole is now. So yeah, I think that'll probably tie up this episode. You've seen bits, and again, partly it's kind of tying in tree corridors and working out where your tree lines are and how this is going to like sit and be in the environment it is. The other benefit, of course, of bringing the dogleg from out here to in here, we're going to have to plant less, and it makes the routing a bit more cohesive. And yeah, generally happier with it. It also gave me a bit more space with this path, which was access road even, which was crazy tight. So that works nicely as well, and I'm happy with that. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Whether I build it out on the next one or not depends on kind of how I'm feeling and how quickly it goes. Yeah, see you again soon. Okay, figured this would be a useful little clip to upload because I said at the start there's a reason why you don't want me doing a full course construction video. Just doing the bunkers on this hole alone have probably taken the best part of 2 hours. And it's really tedious work trying to get the shaping right, look back, start sculpting them, work out whether they're about right, go back, resculpt them. This one still needs properly sculpting, but at least the shaping's there enough. Oh, and I think I lost bits and crashes. Nothing more than 10 minutes work at a time, but yeah, irritating amounts. The thing with the Mackenzie bunkers is that you want them to look jagged, but you still want them to have a form, and you want them to guide your eye, and you want them to kind of sometimes be vertical, sometimes be horizontal. So by guiding your eye, mostly that's going diagonally towards kind of either the hole or the danger, depending on what you want to direct someone's eye to. In this case, it's kind of, I really want to emphasize that dogleg aspect. So the diagonal bunkers, and this isn't really something I'm ever contemplating, but I guess it's my way of explaining the art theory side of it. I kind of want to guide your eye diagonally this way because that's where the hole is turning. Like, it makes more sense. Visually, bunkers going this way are going to look a lot better on this hole than bunkers going that way. Those are forcing your eye somewhere you don't really want to go, and they're hard to make work as a result. So even when I want something going that way, it will still be working in. Even if the bunker string was going this way, it would be shapes that are going this way, and like two of them going something like that. But yeah, we've then got this one was a nightmare to sculpt, and it's kind of how with the hogsback idea that we've got, this land is always going to be lower, right? So therefore, how do you ensure visibility of that bunker whilst all the land is going downhill? And you've got a part of land that functionally needs to be higher than this back part. And it's not going to be totally visible, but that's why these two are here. Because you would know from Caddy or whatever, if you're heading over these ones, there's another bunker further this way on exactly the same line, and it's at 230, whatever. So I'm okay with that. There is a visual reason for it being there. Things that I also really like, if we skip to this, like you get this real big diagonal going throughout the hole. So all the way through this bunker, extending to these two, they're kind of staggered, this string, all of which is just making you think that the trouble is to the left of this hole. And so it makes you want to bail out right a little bit more. But in reality, the worst trouble you can get into being right of this green is absolute death. So it's going to run you down into this sort of an area, and that's not a pitch I would want at all. Whether this becomes cliffs or not, I'm not sure. Probably not. I don't like the idea of you running past here and off the cliffs. If you overshoot the green, absolutely. But I think running down into heavy rough, like a little connection area, and then I'm going to bring the cliffs something like here, but also going lower. And I'm also going to cut into 12 a little bit more diagonally because I think this hole needs a bit of a rework. It was only ever a concept really at the start just to get an idea for the bunkering and the green and where that sits. Now we're getting closer to it and seeing how it ties in with this one. Then it necessitates a little bit more of a change, which I think will make it a more interesting hole as a result. The other stuff I've done in that 2 hours or so has been to look at sculpting the green. And I've done some play testing with it. I originally had this as a pure front to back green, and that kind of plays quite one dimensional, and it also encourages people, if you're not careful, to just go, well, I'll just miss long. Long is fine. And just as long as you're on the green, you're going to have an easy 2-putt back up. So how do you put a little bit of a twist on that? Well, my favourite pin on this green is this little one right here, which still needs some work to make it properly accessible. And it might need some careful work with this bit of the land, because I still want this hog's back spine kicker thing to push you towards this pin. We don't want to take the shot away. But equally, this one looks like it's in a really nice bowl. It's a beautiful pin if you have the balls to just lay up, play a little pitch shot in. Great pin. Everything funnels it towards. Loads of margin for error. However, 250 odd yards out, whilst it looks like a good pin and it's like, yeah, everything, and a good shot will turn into a great shot here pretty quickly because everything's feeding it towards the pin. But what if you miss? Well, suddenly, if you miss down here, you're chipping over this towards this. That's not a backstop. So you've got to be quite precise. Then you're facing a downhill putt. The idea of this one was, well, if you go long, suddenly that is a nightmare pin to go to because it's all running past it. There's a runoff short. If you go this side, nightmare pin. So basically the bailout of this one becomes you must be short or you've got to be perfect. At least that's the thought process. Front left, we're hoping for a kicker slope. This one, you've got this little feeder slope that's going to defend quite nicely against this pin, but it's going to run balls towards this one. And I've got that to happen a couple of times in playtesting so far. And then this one is going to just be mean. You, wherever you are, you're ending up kind of above the hole. And actually, again, there's like you just hit a really good shot to the middle of the green and it'll get even better. Go too far and you're facing a putt across this towards that slope, which is difficult. So I think just within this little green complex, there's a lot of pin positions that I really like that I think work together. It's just going to be getting that shaping, the sculpting really working so that you can land the ball short. Bunker shaping, pretty happy with. I've looked at joining a couple of these bunkers and I may go back to it again because I think I could probably clean up that little sight line. Just leap back into this. Just a touch. You can see how this bit grabs your eye, and that's the sort of thing I'm looking for. Like, am I seeing what I want to see from here? And I'm not quite seeing enough sand on the left-hand side for what I'd like. It's not bad by any means, but I'd like to see a little bit more. But I really like shapes like this one, where it kind of, from a certain angle, it looks like it's two bunkers, or sometimes it's one, like that sort of thing. Mackenzie tried to do a lot, which was really cool. And then this one I'm also a big fan of because it's just a vertical one, but still retaining that kind of stylistic jaggedness. And also the curve going this way kind of highlights you've got this layup area and it opens up the space a bit more this side. So it gives you different options. And we still retain that skyline green that we were looking for. So yeah, that's how this one's progressed and why it's progressed in the way it is. The thing to do next is a bit more playtesting, make sure that it works. I really like the tee shot. It is challenging, it is tight, it will be difficult, and I'm okay with that. But you could easily hit 3-wood out to here with absolutely zero problems whatsoever. You could then hit 3-wood anywhere really down here, or 5-wood. 3-wood, 5-wood, pitch, or full lob wedge. I think this is a really easy birdie. If you decide to go driver, then you're bringing in trouble here. If you then decide to go 3-wood, that's bringing in a lot of potential trouble down here. So it's kind of a restraint sort of hole as well, but I'm willing to bet most people are going to see that and hit driver every single time, because if you land anywhere around about here, you'll get through to here and you've got a good look at the green. But push it too far right, push it too far left, that's where the troubles begin, and then you kind of only accentuate it from there. So yeah, happy with how this one is now, and really pleased with, it's not what I originally envisioned, but really pleased with how it's come out and where it's going to. So that'll kind of do the end of this episode, I think, probably. See you again soon.